Hi everybody, welcome back. My name is Jori. Welcome back to Shattered Silence, Stories of Recovery and Resilience. I am here with Jason today, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Portrait of a Warrior Gallery and kind of just how you got started, you being a vet yourself, just some personal experience and things like that. Jason, can you kind of explain a little bit, I guess introduce yourself,
Sure.
A little bit about your background, being in the military.
Excellent. So first, thanks for having me. This is as important to me as it is to you. Mm-hmm. I know the impact that your story has on everyone, and a lot of us as veterans, we've lost people very close to us that we would consider immediate family, mm-hmm. right? Our brothers and sisters in arms. But my name is Jason Geis, and I come from a small town in southern Indiana, and I ended up deciding to join the Army in 1991, and I chose to become a Army medic, which led me to jumping out of airplanes, and so I became a paratrooper. And so I was with high caliber units, and I deployed 5 times overseas, and saw a lot of trauma. Hopefully I feel like we helped a lot of people, and that's what our job was, is to save lives, right? Doesn't always happen, and those are the hard moments that you carry with you for the rest of your life. But after service, I retired in 2012, and I had met a Bakersfield girl, Jamie Newby is her maiden name, and her mother was working with Wounded Heroes Fund, which is a local nonprofit that's been around for a long time, and I was actually a founding member of Wounded Heroes Fund as a board member with Wendy Porter and that whole group, which would be a good group for you guys to talk to in the future. But I was still on active duty while I was involved in this nonprofit from Kern County, and I was stationed up at Fort Irwin up in the high desert, and that's how I met Jamie's mother, which led me to meet Jamie, which led me to retire, which led me to be in Bakersfield, right? And so that's kind of what brought me here and how I got here from Indiana through 21 years on active duty and then actual retirement. And I'm 100% service-connected disabled to the Veterans Administration, and the biggest issue that I have among all of my physical issues is PTSD. And so it's something that I have struggled with since the time that I left the military, but it's something that I continue to work on. I wouldn't say that I'm healed, but I would say that it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, instead of 3 steps back, half step forward. And that doesn't work real well with your family. And one thing that I can tell you about PTSD is the people you hurt the most are the people that love you the most. It's the people that you go home to when you can't hold it together anymore at the end of the day. And then you take that anger and frustration out on them, and it's not fair. And so I think all of us that struggle with PTSD, we're always trying to look for things that can help us get better for our family and for ourselves. And because of all of that and the service in the military, I think what's imprinted in our DNA after service is we want to continue to serve. And so that's kind of what led me into Wounded Heroes Fund, led me to marrying a Bakersfield girl. And then at some point, about 10 years into Wounded Heroes Fund, I decided that I was going to work with Lily Marsh on Portrait of a Warrior Gallery, which was a way to, what our motto is always remember and never forget. And our goal was to, through local artists, work with the Gold Star family members, families who have lost someone on active duty in combat that died on the battlefield, and say, how can we make their legacy continue to grow? And what can we do in this community to make sure that they're never forgotten? And by working with the families and connecting them with local artists, which I think is cool because they're from our community and they're volunteering to do this for free, they are making this beautiful memory that not only shows who they were, but what they meant to the family and what was important to them other than the fact that they just served our country.
Right.
And so that's where Portrait of a Warrior Gallery started from the concept.
Right.
And then what happened is the gentleman that owns the building saw what we were doing, and he ended up giving us more than double the space that we had planned to use.
Oh my gosh, okay.
That's what led to the Vietnam. That's what led to the 22 crosses to remind everybody about veteran and active duty suicide, and the other missing in action remembered with the dog tags, because there's 82,334 still missing in action from World War II to present.
Oh my gosh.
And just remembering the great loss that our communities had, because if you look at World War I think we had 68 killed in action, and then World War II, 629 from Kern County, and then
crazy.
Korea, 78, and then none in the Gulf War, but we had 179 in Vietnam, and then 27 in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so our community's part of the sacrifice for our freedom is significant, of the blood lost and all of the things that those people would have given back to our community. So then we decided, well, we have other post 9/11 veterans that have died for a lot of different reasons.
Right.
And is it not as important to their family that they served honorably, but they are no longer with us?
Right.
And we need to remember and keep their legacy alive. So as Honor Flight is working from World War II to present, the gallery is working from present towards World War II. That's kind of our goal, so that nobody gets missed.
Right.
And we'll end up in the middle somewhere, Korea, Vietnam-ish area, right? And so with this Hall of Honor that we have, right now we have about 21 post 9/11 veterans that, other than in combat, have died of things such as stroke, heart attack, motor vehicle accident, whether it be a car or motorcycle. We've had both.
Right.
PTSD events, suicide, unfortunately, which is a big focus of education at the gallery, is to make sure we educate the community on veteran suicide. And there's other reasons why some of these people are no longer with us, but we want to remember them as much as we want to remember the ones that died on the battlefield.
Right.
And that's kind of how you and I got brought together, which we were talking about it a little bit earlier, through New Life Church Northwest. Pastor Bart Height, who's the campus pastor, called me and said, I'm having a memorial service for a Marine, Kyle Horton, and I just wanted to let you know. And I said, I'm going to be there.
Right.
I didn't know Kyle. I mean, I feel like he's my brother because he's in the gallery and I see his picture all the time. So I feel like I did know him now. And through you and your son and and his parents and his family, I mean, I feel like I'm now being closer to Kyle, even though I didn't know him, right? I'm learning stories about him. And so his portrait is in the gallery. It's beautiful. And that is kind of how all of this came about, because you and I met, I believe, at the unveiling or leading up to the unveiling of his portrait. And a lot of people came in. Jay came in, his Marine buddy, who's going to be on a podcast as well. And then I met Pedro recently, who will also be on a podcast. He's still active duty Staff Sergeant, Marine Corps. So it's just amazing what the gallery does to bring people together and to honor our fallen, regardless of how they're fallen.
Yes. And you know, I had no idea what this gallery was about, right? And I just heard, oh yeah, we're going to do this unveiling, and they're going to have, we're going to send a couple portraits, and then they're going to actually have someone hand draw it and all this stuff. And I'm like, whoa, what is all this? You know, I had no idea. But like having this moment for Kyle was like obviously bittersweet, because he would have been like, this place is amazing. This is crazy that I'm being honored here. You know what I mean? It makes me emotional, because I'm like, he really, like, the military meant everything to him.
Right.
And so for him to be one of those veterans that's going to be honored, you know, years to come.
That's right.
Is just so special. And so I thank you guys for that and what you guys are doing, because just like families like us, it's like that's just keeping their memory alive, and not just in our homes. You know what I mean? He's going to be able to have friends and other people visit him other than just out at the cemetery. You know what I mean? And I just think that that's so special. And one thing that I really want people to know is that veterans and we talked about first responders having an opportunity to reach out and seek any help or just a listening ear. I know you guys have tons of resources and things for people to reach out and get the help that they need. I know it's a stigma. A lot of people don't want to reach out and come forward and say how they are struggling. We've talked about, because of their careers, they're afraid to say things because they want to still keep that career in response to these first responders. I mean, I know that military it's its own thing. I feel like most of these men are probably like, no, I'm tough. I am not going to come forward. And that is why we're talking, though.
That's right.
We really want to just spread this awareness that it's okay to hurt. It's okay that you've dealt with this trauma and you feel like you're not okay. It's okay to not be okay.
That's your exact. That's
and so
important.
it's okay to not be okay. And I feel like even though so many people, and I have a way different story than any of these veterans, but at the same time, we can connect on this grief or trauma, PTSD. I mean, I haven't been on the battlefield, but I have PTSD myself from certain traumas that I've dealt with in my life, and so I love what you guys are doing, and I just really want everybody to know about it. One thing, too, is that we kind of briefly mentioned Jay and Pedro. They are friends of Kyle's. Right. They met him in the military. Pedro actually didn't even meet him until after Kyle passed. But yeah, you showed them the gallery and kind of talked about what you guys do. And now they are interested in maybe taking place in this program. Can you tell me more about the White Oaks program, right?
Yeah, so when I was talking to Jay and Pedro, I mentioned that I had gone to Mighty Oaks Warrior Program, and they said, I've never heard of that. And it's strange because it's a national nonprofit, and all of these resources you would think would be highly visible. All veterans would know, even active duty service members would know all these resources that are available, but it tends to be found that you're going to hear about it from somebody that's been through it, through a program, or it's grassroots. It's word of mouth. It's not so much it's as known as it should be.
Right.
But this program, actually, it's faith-based, and I've probably gotten more out of this program than any other thing that I've done, and I've tried everything. I told my wife, if there's anything that's worth trying that can help me be better for my family, I'm going to try it.
Right.
Yeah, we talked about ketamine a little bit, and that might be a future podcast, but I even went to the length of going through a ketamine therapy
we can talk about
for
that.
PTSD.
Yeah.
But Mighty Oaks is a week-long program, and it's held in California, Montana. It's held in Ohio, 2 places in Texas, Oklahoma, and Virginia. And so it pretty much spans the entire country. It's zero cost to the veteran or active duty service member. So Pedro could even attend if he needed to or felt like it'd be worth it.
Right.
And his unit would allow him to go. It wouldn't be anything against him. The whole stigma thing, that wouldn't be a part of it at all. Because I'm a team leader for Mighty Oaks, and I see active duty Marines from California all the time at the program, as well as Army active duty.
Right.
And of course veterans.
Right.
And so it's a week-long program for it's men go with men, women go with women.
Okay.
The men's is called Men's Legacy. The women's is called Women's Legacy. Okay. And you go there, you don't really know anybody that's going to be there when you go as a student, but you're going there to get help. So, as you come together, what you realize is what you're dealing with sometimes pales in comparison to what some other people are dealing with.
Right.
And as a group of people that respect one another based on what we've all raised our right hand to say,
Yes.
I'm willing to give my life for my country and
Right.
serve. And these are the wounds and the scars that I carry with myself. And through that week, we're going to kind of get all that out. And we're going to try to leave that baggage behind,
Right.
almost like an altar call, right?
Yes.
You're just ask for forgiveness and move forward and don't carry that into your future, right? And the motto there is, if what you're doing isn't working, why don't you try something different?
Right.
And so we give them a different premise to base their future off of.
Right.
And so everybody has a queen size bed. There's an executive chef at most of the locations. So all the meals are homemade and prepared,
Awesome.
3 meals a day, snacks, refreshments, all that stuff, all the materials, and the flight there and back. So let's say you live in
that's awesome.
California,
Yeah.
but the California date doesn't work, but the Virginia date does work. They will fly you to
Oh my
Virginia
gosh,
and
that
fly
is
you
so
home
cool.
so that you can be at the program.
Right.
And they really look at, when you fill out the application, the more transparent you are, because they really triage. Because if I have a
Right.
guy that just attempted suicide and he failed, he needs to be there right now.
Right.
But if somebody just says, I'm having trouble with PTSD, it's probably going to be a while before they get the, hey, we have a
Right.
date for you. Can you make this date?
Yes.
So one thing I encourage everyone when they go on there onto the Mighty Oaks Program's website is, really say what's going on in your life, because that's going to get you there sooner if you're transparent.
Yes.
So I talked to Jay and I talked to Pedro about it. I sent them a link. I sent them a link for application. And I said, if you have any questions, get in touch with me.
Right.
And so at least now they know about it, and they can now share it with the people they know
Absolutely.
out on the East Coast.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we're hopeful. We do usually 1,000 men a year is the
gosh.
goal
Yeah,
right now
yeah.
for Mighty Oaks.
That's
and it's
awesome.
changing lives and changing legacies and keeping people alive.
Yes.
And if we can save one person.
That's all it is.
And the other cool thing, if you're the service member and I go, my wife can go to the women's legacy. So even though it would be a spouse, she would be there with female vets that applied to go. And if it's a female vet, her husband, who might not be a vet, can go to the men's legacy,
really cool
so that
to
they
know,
can
too.
understand what their spouse, why this is all about.
Yes.
And then they also will pay for you and your spouse to have one of those marriage weekends where they pay for the fee, but you pay to get there, get back. Because they want it to be local so that the people you meet there could become contacts and not fly you somewhere and that it's only a phone call or an email. Right? So it's about building relationships.
That's awesome. That
so
is
that's
so
kind
cool.
of that's the Reader's Digest version of Mighty Oaks, but it's a really great program.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Because I was just, when I was talking to Pedro, you know, he's still active military. So we were talking about his wife a little bit, and he's like, I feel like she is like taking on so much, you know. His last deployment, I want to say he said it was 9 months. And he has 2 young children, 2 children under 5. And so he was talking about his wife, and he's like, you know, she's so strong to even deal with this because I came home a different person, you know, and that happens a lot. And seeing your kids so much different and stuff like that, obviously it impacted both of them. But I thought it was really cool that he brought up his wife and acknowledging that she's going through a lot too.
That's right.
And so the fact that this program also does the same thing, I think that's just really such a cool thing to just, you know, bring in the spouse too, because it's a lot on a person to also be that full support for someone that's gone through trauma and all that stuff, like we talked about a little bit. So yeah, that's great. I'm not sure how much you are going to be able to share about it, but can you give an example of maybe one of the exercises that they do there?
Yeah, I mean, without saying too much, you know, some of the topics that we cover are like purity, brotherhood, marriage. What are some other ones that we go through? Margin, which is really important for vets, because what we like to do is fill up our calendar so it's so full we don't have to deal with our own problems, right? And that was a big part of my issue is I had too many things. but it didn't leave any room for anything else that might be more important.
Right.
And I never had to deal with my own issues.
Right.
Because I was always out trying to help somebody else with theirs, right? That's a big pitfall for veterans. And so I think margin is a really important class that we go through. But we do team building things too. Like they'll do zip lining, they'll do horseback riding at a ranch to break up the monotony of you get together in a larger group, you have a class, then you break out. And what the team leaders do, and all of us that are team leaders have been students. So nobody that's leading a team hasn't been in their seat before. And we all give our testimonies to these guys that we don't even know. So before we give our class, we share with them intimate things about us that we don't share with even sometimes some of our closest people that are in our lives, to show them vulnerability and to show them what we want to see from them by the end of the week. And so I think that that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. Like one thing I would say too is that as far as Kyle goes, it's he would briefly, like, you don't even understand some of the things that I went through, and a lot of people that he deployed with ultimately committed suicide. And so he had, I want to say it was at least 6 guys by the time that he passed away, and he was like, that just shows you how much we saw and how messed up it was, and that's all I would kind of ever get, and he's like, I won't tell you, and I'm like, that's okay, I'm not asking you to tell me, I'm just saying that I'm here if you ever do need to talk to me, I'm an open ear. But knowing that there's a program there, I wish he could have gone to a program like that, because he may not have felt comfortable to share it with me, but with brothers and sisters that have gone through the same thing as him, I mean, I know he would be okay with sharing, you know what I mean?
For sure.
And I wish for anyone that, is still struggling, I hope that they can, even a friend, a family member, anyone can pass this along to them, just to be like, hey, there are those resources out there.
That's right. You want to be who's going to be the one person that's going to make a difference if somebody's going down that path? Can you be the one? The one person standing between them and them making that decision to take their own life. Who's going to be your one? Who's your battle buddy? Who's that person that's watching out for you when sometimes you have blind spots and you don't see that you're headed down this path of isolationism or a path of anger or anxiety or all the different vices that come from something that we can date all the way back to David in the Bible after he fought Goliath. If you read about that, he talks exactly about what PTSD is, about waking up in a bed full of water because he's having night terrors and asking God why that is. Well, it's your body's natural response to an event that is not normal to experience. And if you think about what veterans and first responders or anybody in our community having a car accident, losing somebody close to them, but for a veteran and first responder, you talk about 20 years, 10 years, 12 years of having experience after experience after experience. It's a career of PTSD. It's not necessarily one event. It's a culmination of all the events that you experience that you're trying to deal with all of those things and you don't have the understanding, tools, or resources or help. And a lot of times you need professional help to get through that. And that's the hardest part. And you mentioned programs and how you like how Mighty Oaks includes the spouse. One of the focuses that we have at the gallery is, if we're going to bring a program to the gallery, we want the family to be as included as possible, because it doesn't help the family if you send a veteran to go hunt an elk or you send a veteran to go fishing, which is great. I don't begrudge any vet that wants to go deep sea fishing or go surfing for the day or whatever, but let's think about what we did as service members to our family. We left them behind. We left our spouses to take care of our kids. And then we came home and we weren't the same person we were when we left. And now we're telling you we're going hunting in Wyoming, right? And it's just like a deployment. So how about we bring the spouse and the kids.
Yes.
And we do things like equine therapy, like up in Caliente with this guy that's a Vietnam vet, and it's a VA certified program.
Okay.
Equine therapy.
Yes.
And so my wife and my daughter Madison, and at the time she was like maybe, I would say she's almost 11. She was maybe 7 or 8.
Okay.
My wife and I went up in the morning. We had a little like continental breakfast thing in a cabin. We met with the guy and kind of told him our story, where we were at, what we were struggling with. And what he does is he uses wild Mustangs that are being gentled for adoption.
Okay.
And also like a real cowboy that's got a horse that'll do anything he says, right? And what horses can see is the true self, right? So if you go out there and you have a mask on and you're acting like you're somebody that you're not, or you're not really being who you are, a wild horse is going to sense that, and they're never going to let you get near them.
Yeah.
The goal of that program is for you to get the horse to let you touch its nose.
Oh my gosh.
And you work through everything with the cowboy and the horse that already knows what to do. And the other thing is, like at Mighty Oaks, if you go there and the mask gets the program, guess what happens to the true self? No change.
Right.
Because you got to remove your mask and be who you really are, and let's get to the root of the problem so you can heal.
Yes.
And those are two things I think that are really important, is for you to take off the mask and for you to make sure you include your family with your healing process.
Yeah.
Because the family has secondary PTSD. My wife and my daughter have PTSD from me.
Yeah.
And I feel terrible about that. It hurts my heart.
Yeah.
Because I don't want my wife to have to go through that.
Right.
But I've caused that on her, and I've caused that on my daughter, and I caused it on my stepkids as well, who I call my son and daughter, right? I mean, they're still my kids. I've been in their life for a long time.
Right.
But to know that I caused that damage is really it's a hard pill to swallow.
Right.
It is.
But it also takes a lot for you to go and do something about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean,
Sure.
I know it's got to be tough putting your family in any sort of tough situation.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you're sitting back and letting it happen, it's one thing, but to actually go out and try and make it better, make it right is a totally different thing. And I think that's awesome, you know?
That's true.
Yeah. Ultimately, you know, Kyle self-medicated, and that is what ended his life. He struggled for a while, just like I mentioned, with his friends passing away, and it was like I'd come home and I'd see him like a mess, just crying, and I'm like, what's going on, you know? And I always like kind of knew it's another friend, it's another buddy from the military. And so, you know, I wish that I had seen more of the signs that I look back and see now. He had mentioned a couple times about, you know, going and getting help, and I can't do this anymore. And I really thought it was more, I thought it was more of just finding his purpose after the military. That was his biggest struggle. Just that transition. It was like, you know, in the military, he felt like he had such a big purpose, and he was there for all of his brothers, and he, you know what I mean? He knew that his job was important, and he loved to serve his country. And so getting out of the military, and then maybe I'll go in the oil fields, because that's all my parents or my family has done, my brothers and my dad. And so he did that for a little while, and then it's he just didn't have that fulfillment, you know what I mean? And so he did kind of hop around a little bit. He went into solar, and then it was just like, I could tell too, he just never felt fulfilled by these jobs. It was just a job. It wasn't a career for him, you know what I mean? And so he struggled with that so much. And because of that struggle and finding that purpose, ultimately he ended up getting addicted to pills. And I know that previously, before I even met him, he struggled a little bit, and then he ended up going to the military, and that saved and changed his life. And so coming back, you know, that's one of the things that's like, okay, no, I don't need to do that. I don't need to do that. But then after a while, it's like he just kind of gave up, and I did get to see it firsthand for a little bit, and we both struggled for a while because I was there with him through this addiction. And it wasn't very long until finally I noticed things were changing. And so we went and got help. He actually went to Aspire, which is a whole nother thing too of how this all connected and us coming into this podcast. And so after he went and got help from Aspire, he did an outpatient program, and he was doing great. I could tell the difference in him. He was just so full of life again. And then we found out we were having our baby, and that brought so much life back into him as well. And so when he did decide to self-medicate, when he lost his life, none of us knew. Nobody knew that he was struggling like that to the point that he would want to take anything. We're like, no way. He would not even touch that stuff again. We just got engaged. We have a 9-month-old baby. There's no way. So when he first passed away, we were all confused. It's like, what is going on? How did this happen? Did he just have a heart attack, randomly? And so we were completely blindsided. And so that's what kind of started the spark in me, because I'm like, I want people to not, don't waste that time. You know what I mean? If you see the signs and that they need help, like, again, there are so many resources. Get that help that you need before it's too late, And so, and I know now, thinking about everything that we're working on, just really spreading that awareness and letting people know that they're not alone. I know that Kyle would be so proud and happy to be a part of this as well. I mean, he's not here to do this with us, but we're here because of him. Right. Ultimately, I'm here because of him. This podcast is going because of him. That's right. And I've even had gone and talked with someone that is very intuitive and has some spiritual connections, and that's a whole different conversation. But she did tell me from the very beginning, I keep having this feeling of it's like, Kyle, I want to help people. And that was so weird because it was only, I would say, probably 2 months after he passed. And then here we are today trying to help people that are, that are like him or like me or like you, just all the different situations that you go through, and trauma and grief and PTSD and all the mental health issues. So anyways, I can't say it enough how much we just want to really spread that awareness.
That's right.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think if there's anything that you want to add yourself. I mean, I know we've talked a lot.
On the addiction side,
yes.
One thing that I've found that's really troublesome, and it's something that's going to have to get fixed at the governmental level. Mm-hmm. It's going to take our lawmakers to fix it. The VA clinic here in Bakersfield. Mm-hmm. If we have a veteran that's addicted to drugs, and I'm not talking prescription drugs, I'm talking methamphetamine, heroin, fentanyl. Mm-hmm. I'm talking shooting up in their carotid artery every 6 hours. Yeah. Those deaths do not count as veteran suicide. Those deaths are just deaths. Mm-hmm. They're accidental overdoses. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk at the gallery about everyone knows suicide is 22 a day, it's really about 46 a day now between active duty and veterans. That doesn't even include first responders. 46 every day, not including the ODs. So I had a veteran that worked for me for a while, and he stopped showing up for work or not showing up at all, and I had to let him go. And I come to find out, it's just one of those things. It boomerang, right? It comes back to you. I get a call from a guy I know in North Carolina, a law enforcement officer in North Carolina to California to Bakersfield. Wow. He's like, hey, I've got a relative there that's having a really hard time with drugs. It turns out to be the same guy.
No
And the guy in North
way.
Carolina is
That gave me chills.
he's a team leader with me in Mighty Oaks.
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't know that it was the same guy until I put his number in my phone and it came up as a contact because he had worked for me before.
Look at this.
I know. And I can't say his name because of HIPAA and all that.
Of course.
But every month I would text him and I would say, "Do you want to be well?" That's all I would do. I would just ping him once a month.
Yeah.
Many months later, I get a response. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
But we're talking methamphetamine, fentanyl-laced heroin, injecting 4 times a day in his carotid artery.
That makes me tear up.
So every time he did that, that was Russian roulette. And he had survived it, and he was living in a drug house in Oildale. So I would pick him up at a gas station. I'd leave work, go pick him up, take him to the VA clinic, trying to get this guy help because the only connection he had to help was that he was actually registered as a disabled veteran. So he was connected to the clinic. The clinics are not set up like an ER where you can go in and say, this buddy of mine who's my military brother, he is very addicted to highly illegal and sensitive drugs that could kill him in 8 hours from now.
Yes.
He's already been Narcan 3 times, 2 himself, 1 somebody else.
Oh
So
my
that's 3
gosh.
times that he lived that he shouldn't have. And he wants help today, but he might not want help tomorrow.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
he's got to go get his fix.
Yes.
Right? So for 3 days, another Vietnam veteran that's a good friend of mine and myself took turns sitting down at the VA trying to get him help, trying to get him clean. And then finally I got Shannon Grove's office involved and we got him to Good Samaritan. And because of Medi-Cal or Medicaid, they medically detoxed him. I drove him over to the coast to a program over there of somebody that I know. And he had some personality conflicts with another patient, but he went back to Good Samaritan over there, like Santa Maria. And he's been clean for almost 9 months.
Oh my gosh.
He's in a veteran housing program that he gets drug tested. He goes to AA and NA. He's in college.
Oh my gosh.
And he's going to Mighty Oaks in July.
That is so cool.
But that's one person.
Yeah.
Think of all the effort that everyone put into that one guy, but he was going to die any day.
Yes.
He was down to a skateboard, a cell phone, and living in a crack house.
Oh my gosh.
And he also had a tattoo gun, so guess what his friends did while he was high? They would tattoo his face. So he has tattoos all over his face, around his eyes, his nose, everywhere. And that garden pathways, they're working to do his tattoo removal on his face.
Oh my gosh.
And so
These are the stories we need to hear.
his whole goal, and maybe one day he'll come and tell his story on your podcast.
Yeah.
But he trusts me and he doesn't trust very many people.
Right.
And I just try to guide him in the direction that I feel the Holy Spirit's leading me to guide him, because if I guide him in the wrong way, it could lead to disaster. And so I just pray, let me give him the right message.
Tools. Yeah, the right tools, the right message.
I was at a life group, like a couples life group thing from Northwest New Life.
Okay.
And I got a text message and it said, "Jason, I'm really scared, but I think I'm ready to surrender."
Oh my gosh.
So we're working through that, and that's why he's going to go to Mighty Oaks. But that's one life saved. And of everything all of us do, that's one person that it doesn't have to be in the gallery.
Yeah.
That's going to go on and have a relationship with a son that's in Oregon that's like 10 years old.
Yeah.
And every focus of his is on, I want to see my son again.
Right.
And he's laser focused on it.
Yeah.
And I found a Korean War vet up in Tehachapi that's going to donate a car to him. So they're going to donate it to Valley Baptist for like $1, or they're going to donate it for the value as a write-off, and then Valley's going to sell it to him for $1.
Oh my gosh.
So he'll have a car.
That is so cool.
So I don't
That's
mean
so
to take up
special.
all this extra time at the end, but I wanted to give you an example of it's really hard to get help for addiction at the VA. You got to go to West LA and you got to get in the domicile, which is usually a 30-day wait.
Yeah.
And if it's over 30 days, you might get referred out to one of these programs. But there are programs out there, but they're expensive.
Right.
And you have to follow what your insurance and everything
Right.
allows. And it's like you don't have 30 days with people like
Right.
that. You have to get them into help right now.
Right.
And what can we do to make that happen? Because, like I said, 46 a day, not including the ODs.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
No, that's terrible.
It is.
And that's something too that Kyle had even mentioned. It's like, Kyle, you need to go and see someone, then you need to get help, and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, I'll just go to the VA. But, he's like, but the VA is kind of a joke, It's like, I've heard that from so many
It's hit or
people
miss.
here.
I had a really good counselor at the VA, Peggy Plant. She's retired.
Okay.
But she retired.
Yeah.
And I had a great rapport with her, and now I don't have somebody there because I haven't been reassigned.
Right.
And I struggle to want to try to rebuild rapport with another counselor.
Right.
Because it's so hard to make that connection where
It
you
really
feel
is,
safe.
yeah.
And that they understand you and they're helping guide you
Right.
and you're trusting them.
Right.
And then I get it. She worked her whole life helping people. It was time for her to retire, but it was just a great loss for me and
Right.
everybody that had her as a counselor.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. So it's kind of there's
I
some good
know.
ones and there's some not so good ones.
Right.
And you gotta what you gotta do is say, I'm not making a connection with this counselor, request a new one.
Okay.
And just go through the process until you can find one that you can build rapport
Right.
with. That's the best you can do.
Right. I think
Yeah.
that's so helpful, though.
Yeah.
Oh, man. A lot of good information.
For sure.
Like, such good information. And I love that you shared that story because I feel like that's really what people need to hear.
Right.
Is that it's not just this sad story of losing somebody or someone that couldn't get help. We
That's
need to
right.
hear that there are people that are getting help and seriously turning their lives around as well.
That's right.
Because of the resources that are here. I do want to talk a little bit about Aspire, though, because Aspire is so great. I remember Kyle also talking about, oh, well, Scott's going to get me in this military group. He's got like a group of like 10 guys. And I want to say he even went a couple times. And coming back from that, I remember him saying, that was so cool. I got a couple guys' numbers. And so, yes, community and like having that connection with other like-minded people is so important. So if there's any veterans or first responders that are looking for that, Aspire is there for you as well. So.
Yeah, I'd love to partner with them potentially with something at the gallery.
Yeah, that would be so great.
Because that would be the good feeder place and it'd be a good place for them to meet people.
Right.
And to figure out what could work based on demographics.
Right.
Like you've got older vets like the Vietnam guys that have a certain way they like to approach things like that.
Right.
Then you got the post 9/11 guys and gals that are a little bit more open to things. And so, maybe they could have some groups because there's already a PTSD group for Vietnam, but they don't have any counselors involved in it. And then maybe people need some one-on-one.
Yeah.
Or maybe they need to start in a group until they feel comfortable to go one-on-one. And that might be where the real healing happens, but they got to be able to build rapport with the vets.
Right.
And so I'm more than happy to say the gallery is open to that partnership with Aspire.
Right. That would be so awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think we shared some great stories and you answered all my questions. So
I don't think this will be the last time.
No. We'll talk again for sure.
Yeah, I've got so many, and like the resources that I forward to your phone, I've got so many people that I think would be really good for you to get in this share.
Awesome.
And build your podcast because it's gonna be helpful.
Yeah, I hope so.
And
like we said, just one person.
It's gonna save lives.
Yes.
It's gonna it will save lives. It will.
I really hope so. And like we said, if it's even one person,
that's right.
That's the goal. That's what we want to do. We just want to help one by one. So
I'm with you. Blessings to your endeavors, and
thank you so much.
And our goal is to keep Kyle's legacy moving forward, and this podcast is a part of Kyle's legacy.
Right, it is.
So I love it, and I love that you're doing it, and all I can do is wish you the very best.
Thank you.
Thanks
again. I really appreciate it. My name is Jori. Thank you for watching Shattered Silence, Stories of Recovery and Resilience. As always, you can watch full episodes on YouTube. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And also do not forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.